Okay, so the first game we're going to test is Resident Evil 3. Let's just go through the display settings here. That's fine. I turned HDR on for now. Okay, so pretty much I've just went through most of them and turned them to max. The first test, I'm going to leave this Fidelity FX on, wherever that went. Here it is. I'll just leave that as on, just see how it looks, and then we'll go back and see how the performance is in the game itself. We're at this setting here, we're at about 50% VRAM, 144 frames per second. So we're basically getting, that's the max of the screen. The screen goes up to 144 because it's 144 hertz. So max, basically. Just check the temps real quick. So it looks like here we're getting, like 63 max on the GPU. That's the highest it's ever gotten. CPUs went up to 68, so not hot on either of these. But let's see if we can hit it a little bit harder. And we'll do that by turning off, in theory, this should hit it a little bit harder. We'll turn off the Fidelity FX, which basically upscales. So we'll turn that off, and then we'll come down here, and we're just going to run it, try to run it natively if we can. Can we turn that up? So it looks like that's the highest we're going to get. So if we turn off Fidelity FX and all the upscaling and set texture quality to high, we get really close to max VRAM, which is what I want to do actually. I really want to blast this as hard as I can. So now we're not quite getting 144 frames per second anymore. We're down to 120. So by turning off Fidelity FX, which is a really good feature, that the fact that this this is an all AMD machine, so not every game is going to support Fidelity FX. Fidelity FX is basically AMD's version of DLSS, if you're not aware. Something along the lines of that. It's not exactly the same, but similar. Not all games support it. When they do, you can get really great performance. So you can basically you run it at a lower resolution, then you upscale, and you get great performance. Here, it works great in this game. And if I turn it off and I just run the native resolution and crank everything up, it's obviously going to be more demanding. So yeah, now we're dipping down quite a bit, closer to 75 frames per second. So we're still sitting above 60, no problem. Okay, so this is a demanding scene. Here one more time, we'll turn those the Fidelity FX back on and just see how much it drops it back down. There we go. So this is pretty much as max as we can get with the Fidelity FX still on. Let's see where we're at here. Oh, we've actually went up quite a bit now. So now we're up to 140. So with Fidelity FX turned on, basically Ultra, we're getting almost double the FPS. 120 to 140, so really good performance. Oh, that guy's gonna die. So we'll test Titanfall 2 on my Ultrawide now, and we'll just see how this looks. We'll just leave the settings all as they were. And there we are. And I don't know, I guess we'll just continue with single player for now. So now we're testing the same settings on the ultra-wide. You can see in the middle there, it's a little bit small, but we're getting 144 hertz, 144 frames per second around. It's dipping down a little bit, down to a bit below that, but this screen can do 144 no problem. VRAM is still only at 30%, so I mean it's just not being taxed. The GPU, however, is being utilized finally on the ultra-wide. You can see there it's going up to 100%. So we are utilizing it on the ultra-wide, not exceeding VRAM, so we're able to get 144 hertz and it'll be nice and smooth. All right, so the temps look like we got a little bit warmer. We finally got the GPU up to 68, so it went above 65. Still not hitting 70, even though it was at 100%. And the up here it's at 65. So, and CPU is still below 80. It's still below 70. So it looks like, we're at 70 degrees on the CPU, slightly below 70 degrees, and still below 70, and still below 70 on the GPU. And that's running Titanfall 2 at basically max settings on an ultra-wide. And it runs fine.
Switch to a different weapon.
No. So again, this is everything maxed in the game except ray tracing turned off and fidelity effects turned off. So this is native 1440p. And it looks like we're getting over 30, 35 frames per second or so. Okay, so, we're sitting at about 40 frames per second, 45. It hasn't really got below 40, really. Everything max, ray tracing off. Let's turn ray tracing on. I'm sure it's going to perform terribly. Yeah, look at that. That's just disgusting. So, not good, obviously. Let's go back here. We'll change the settings a little bit further. So you can see ray tracing on Ultra is not going to work without fidelity effects turned on. So let's go up and turn fidelity effects on. Let's go for Ultra Performance. Let's go for balanced. There's all these different settings you can come in here, and you can Ultra Performance. Ultra Performance is going to be the smoothest, which might be important for ray tracing. Quality is going to look the best. We'll just do balanced for now. See how that works with ray tracing on. Yeah, so right away, the ray tracing is, we can actually get ray tracing, but the visual quality is not as good. It looks kind of blurry. You can play it like this. It's not bad, but again, in my opinion, I don't like ray tracing. I would not sacrifice performance for ray tracing, at least not yet. I think it's kind of a down the road kind of feature. Turn off ray tracing and we're back up 60, almost 50 frames per second. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you, the game looks a little blurry like this. You're getting up to almost 60 frames per second, but it's a bit blurry in my opinion. So I would just go like that. Yeah, that looks better, to be honest, but we're losing frames. So, yeah, like you can see there, when it's cranked up, you're going to lose a ton of frames. So you kind of need fidelity effects on if you're going to have, all these things turned up. Let's turn ray tracing right off. Absolutely no ray tracing whatsoever. Yeah, and with ray tracing turned off, everything max, no fidelity effects, you're getting 45 frames per second. And it looks great. The game looks great. Nice and crisp. Right? Yeah, and see that's where you want to be. Right now we're sitting at 100 frames per second. Fidelity effects auto turned on, so it doesn't look soft. The game does not look soft to me. And ray tracing turned off, which is an unneeded feature, in my opinion. And now we're above 60 frames per second. No problem. And we're still sitting over 45 frames per second. So you could play with fidelity effects turned on, but with this card, honestly, I would just run it ultra. If you're okay with 30 to above 30 but below 60, so approximately 45 frames per second, which is still great. Just turn it to ultra, and that's it. Keep ray tracing off. Keep ray tracing off. Turn fidelity effects off, and just play it at 45 frames per second with everything on ultra. It's fine. It looks great. GPU temp is 60 degrees basically. Max was 65, 68 over here. And CPU, we still haven't beat 70, so we're still not hot. We're still not, this is Cyberpunk absolutely maxed, and we've never went above 70 degrees. We haven't even hit 70 degrees on anything. Yeah, so now we're over 60 frames per second. So on Ultra Max everything, you're getting 45 frames per second on this GPU. Still not beating 70 degrees, but it's basically running on Ultra at 45 frames per second. We'll just say that's the summary there. And if you turn the settings down to basically high, a bit of a mix, but nothing low, nothing really, basically everything kind of in the middle ground. Now you're getting 60 frames per second. Let's turn the Fidelity effects back on again. We'll turn it to auto, and we'll leave it on kind of high presets and just see how this looks. Yeah, so this will get you closer to 100 frames per second. You know, 85, 90. Okay, so here we are in Cyberpunk at 4K. The settings we're going to start with are auto for Fidelity effects, so it's on, and just medium. We'll just see how that works. I doubt we're going to get high out of this, but I guess that was me. So Fidelity effects here. Yeah, we're getting 60 frames per second. When you're on 1440p and use the Fidelity effects, it looks fine, but there's a little bit of softness off in the distance. With 4K, because you're up-resing, you know, a pretty good resolution up to 4K, this doesn't look soft in the background. So it actually looks great, and it's running at 60 frames per second. Medium, 4K. This looks great. Settings and Fidelity effects just to auto. And again, everything looks wonderful. I beat this game on the Series X, and I don't think it looked any different. It looked about the same, in my opinion. This might look a little better, maybe, I'm not sure. Yeah, we're consistently above 60 frames per second. Let's turn, just for a test, let's turn Fidelity effects off and see how it looks just natively. Okay, so here we are, just native 4K. Fidelity effects off. We can leave that on, it doesn't really matter. And let's see how that looks. Oops. And yep, so everything's basically high. There's some still stuff that can be maxed, but let's see how that looks. Yep, so here we are, 4K, Fidelity effects off, and we're at about 30 frames per second. So if you want to play this game at high with Fidelity effects off, at 4K you can. It's 30 frames per second, which is kind of like, you know, last gen console level, but that's fine. So this is a really good scene to test out Fidelity effects. So right now, Fidelity effects, we'll turn it to off. So this is native 4K, and on high settings, and the buildings back there are very, very crisp. May not be able to see on camera as well as I can, but extremely sharp. We're only getting 30 frames per second, but everything is very, very sharp. If you come down now and we turn Fidelity effects on, we'll just put it to auto, which seems to work really well. The buildings have softened. Up front, things are not soft, at least to my eye. These don't look soft to me, but at a distance the buildings do. However, in this type of game, I mean, we're looking way off into the distance. This is actually kind of more realistic. In the real world, when you look way off into the distance, there's atmospheric effects and blurring at a distance. You know, buildings don't stay at ultra crisp resolution when you're really, really far away. Okay, so now we're going to do Grand Theft Auto 5. This isn't a particularly demanding game, to be honest. You can play this with integrated graphics with good settings, but I decided to do it anyways, because why not? Okay, so now we got past that initial part, which is full of swearing, and we're getting 65 frames per second here, 1440p, everything max. Looks like we're up to, goes up to about 100, but it looks like we're sitting at about 70, 75. All right, so we'll just check the settings. Everything's maxed out here, and we're over 60 FPS. We're sitting about 70. Whoa. So it looks like this is, you know, a 1440p over 60 FPS card for this game specifically. Forgot how annoying it is to chase this guy, but So it looks like ultra settings, everything maxed. You know, we were driving, we were sitting at about 70, running around, we're also sitting about 70. Look at how zoomed out that is, that's weird. Yeah, the game looks fantastic at, you know, at 1440p with everything maxed out. It looks great. Above 60 frames per second, so it's really, really nice. But yeah, there you go. Maximum frames per second, we'll put unlimited. Let's just put it on ultra or whatever. Let's go with that. Hairworks, whatever. Just leave it on.
Just after they'd taken his third thing, and once it spilled where he kept his gold, they cut off the rest.
So it looks like we're getting, I don't know, we're dipping down to around 85, but we're basically getting around 90 to 100 or so. And this is 14, again, it's 1440p, everything basically ultra. So there you go, great. I mean, I guess you could turn down the settings if you want and get more frames per second, but why would you want to do that? You know, 80 is more than enough, to be honest. And VRAM is not maxed, not even close, we're at 44. GPU goes up and down, but it looks like we're sitting at 70 or 80. So I guess, I mean, the only way to really increase that would be if you went with 4K. You could obviously run this game on a 4K monitor, no problem. If we're only getting 75% GPU utilization at 1440p means you can go more. So let's switch this over to the ultra wide and let's see if we can tax it a little bit more. Okay, so here we are in on the ultra wide. We'll turn it on the ultra wide setting so you can see it went to 344 by 1440. Okay, so here we are on the ultra wide. So this is going to be much more demanding than the non-ultra wide, obviously. So we should drop some frames. Looks like we're still at 65. You know, this is still not quite as demanding as 4K, but it's, you know, you're getting up there in terms of the pixel count. So 1440p ultra wide, so 344 is 0, 1440p ultra settings, and we're above 60 frames per second. Again, not the most demanding game. If you played this on 1080p, you'd get, you know, huge performance. But basically, this is, you know, this machine is able to play Witcher 3 on ultra settings at a 1440p ultra wide above 60, which is actually a really nice setting. Okay, now here we are in Witcher 3 on 4K, so we'll just set it at 4K there, and we'll just put it to ultra, whatever. Oh, I don't know why that turned the resolution back down, but that's the resolution of the screen there. We'll just kind of leave everything at max over there. Okay, so here we are back into the Witcher 4K, basically ultra settings, and around 50 frames per second. And this is max settings 4K Witcher. It's not the newest game, but it's still an extremely demanding game, especially at 4K. And you know, there's no Fidelity effects or anything running, this is just native 4K. So you could totally play like this. 50 frames per second is very playable. People may think, oh, it's not 60, but you're probably not going to notice a difference. If you're really worried about it, you could drop the settings probably to high. Let's try that. All right, so what's my takeaway for this machine in terms of gaming? Clearly it is a 1440p powerhouse. Any game you throw at it, AAA brand new games, 1440p, you're going to be getting basically 60 frames per second, potentially more depending on which game it is. You can tweak settings, you know, that's on ultra. You can tweak settings, you can drop it down to, like, for example, medium and get medium or high and get, you know, 120 to 144 frames per second depending on the game. But clearly on 1440p, which is the native resolution of the screen, I mean, it's 1600p, but, you know, it's basically, I would equate it to a 1440p screen. So on 1440p, this machine is incredibly capable. You can really throw any game at it, max out the settings, and you're good to go. 4K, it's actually very capable as well. You know, we're looking 60 frames per second, max everything in Witcher on 4K. In Cyberpunk at 4K, you can run it, you know, on high settings and still get 30 frames per second. Or if you want max and, you know, you want to ultra everything, then you just turn on Fidelity FX. And because it's at 4K up-resing, you know, it looks great, to be honest. So that's, I guess, my takeaway here. It is an absolute powerhouse at 1440p, 1600p, which is the screen resolution. So if you're just playing on the screen, just expect to max everything. Just go into the game, crank everything to max, and have at it, and you're going to have, you know, an incredibly high performance. If you want to hook up to an external 4K, which is, you know, what most people have for a TV, you can certainly hook this up to a 4K TV and have no problems whatsoever. Or, you know, hook it up to a 1440p ultra-wide, which for many people is more immersive than a 4K TV anyways, because you get, you know, a lot more peripheral on either side. So it's certainly capable of doing above what the screen comes with. So you could do 1440p ultra-wide or 4K and, you know, have a blast with it. So, but if you're just playing with it, you know, right on the laptop, take it out, put everything to max, and just play the games at 60 to 120 frames per second or whatever you want to play it at.